Well, guys, I am really excited to talk about up-leveling and getting your marketing to the next level. So as you heard in my intro, this is what I do every single day is I help vendors just like you understand marketing and try to do it for them. So one of the first things we have to think about is, are your inquiries lighting you up? And I want you to think about that because we know it's been a crazy couple years. I mean, I don't need to tell you that. But as you pour your heart and soul into your business, I want you to be thinking about, are these inquiries that are coming in, are they aligning with me? One of the biggest things when people come to me is they say, my inquiries are plentiful, but they do not at all appreciate what I do. They complain. They're not quite the people we're looking for. Maybe you've been stuck addressing questions over and over again, and you start to get really frustrated because you feel like you're talking in an echo chamber. You're like, I've said this 75 times and no one's listening to me. The reason might actually be our marketing. So a lot of times when people come to me, they think maybe I need a sales strategy or I need a new website. And a lot of times it just comes down to some of the fundamental things we're covering today are actually the biggest drivers. Because our marketing has two jobs. It needs to speak directly and target them, but it also needs to respectfully repel away the bad clients. If we are in a sea of trying to market to everybody, anyone who's been doing this for a few years knows how quickly and draining that gets. We need to start figuring out how are we going to start aligning to that so that our couples really can't wait to book us. So today we're going to talk a bit about what makes a higher end client actually, what do they care about? Because it does shift as we get into different price points. Our marketing strategy has to adjust. How are we going to create things that speak directly to them? Again, we want to speak to the right audience and we want to naturally kind of repel people who are just not the best fit. And how are we going to actually elevate to be the only one they're actually interested in? So I do want to talk about what does this mean, because let's be honest, there's 500 coaches out there. They're all going to tell you a different thing about luxury, right? They're going to say luxury is this. There's the budget. There's the lovely. Like, I'm just going to give statistical. So whatever you guys have heard is probably also very valid, I think, in data, and I think in data points. So these markets come from a company called Think Splendid. Hands down, the best investment you'll make is understanding your market. Think Splendid every year surveys hundreds of thousands of couples. They give us actual data. So the pricing we're going to talk about today is 26% of the upper market share. So let's just step back for a second. In the US altogether, 48% of the market is going to be under 20,000. We're going for that top half. So I just want to not 26% of all couples. We obviously know that's not true. This is in that upper half. So at that upper half, 96 to 100 is obviously a big majority. Mid-luxury, luxury, ultra-luxury is when we start to get to 500. So my goal today isn't for you to say, I have to be ultra-luxury, because that's hard in terms of their job. And it's not bad, it's not good, it just means that maybe it's not your exact audience. So I don't want you to necessarily think about, I'm trying to tell you have to be a certain one of these. No. I'm telling you, how are we gonna up level to whatever that next stage of your business is? So super brief, like they mentioned, so we really can't market our business until we know how our audience buys. And I became really fascinated in marketing because at 23, when I was still in college and thought it really was a good idea, I decided to open a wedding planning, floral, and bridal boutique company. I managed a bridal salon. I paid through college working commission-based retail. It's the only job I've ever known. Got it at 17, literally never looked back. And when you are going, and I went to a very expensive art school. So when you have hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans and you're paying yourself, like you're having to rely on commission, you learn really quickly how to sell to people. Because you have to figure out, it's not the person in front of you whose decision it actually ends up being half the time, right? There are other people in the room that have just as much of a stake in this event. And that's when I really got kind of addicted to this idea of, oh, I can't actually market and then sell my stuff if I don't understand what the heck I'm actually gonna be selling. So the first thing we have to think about if we are getting into a higher market, it is not just raising prices. 9 times out of 10, when someone comes to me and they say, I doubled my price on my website, but no one's booking, it's because, well, what did you do other than that? We have to think about some of the back end side of our business if we're elevating to certain markets, because they're gonna come to you and say, you charge this, I am fully expecting a different suite of items. So for example, they're gonna value time over money. If you get to a stage where you have 700 forms for them to fill out, you've already lost a big chunk of that audience. They don't have time for that. They hire a planner to do that for them. So you have to start having the mindset of, I'm actually selling to the planner just as much as I'm selling to that couple. They want someone who's not just trustworthy, but an expert. The more you charge, the more of an expert you have to be at what you do. It's not just trusting you because you're fun and friendly, it's, I can really pull this off. It's about how you're gonna collaborate with the other vendors. Again, the larger the wedding, the more vendor pieces. If your marketing is only, I do this, I do this, I do this, and you're not talking about the team collaboration, you've lost out on a lot of couples because they are looking for the vendor that says, I work well with 45 vendors. I work well if you want an aerialist or you just have an extra live painter. That's what they're looking for. And that elevated service has to happen at every level. So for example, photographers, you need a faster turnaround time the higher you get. So if a lot of my clients, if they're charging $20,000 to $50,000 for photography, 2 weeks or less, including film photographer, is a requirement. And they're not charging more for that. Why? Because there might be a press feature already figured out. Or it could be something where they just naturally need more, or having a larger associate team. For planners, they could be thinking about, do I need additional staff on the day of so that they feel comfortable? One of my clients, they have 2 team members whose job is guest management. That's it. They are there on the shuttle to make sure not a single person is confused, upset, or concerned. They are there to make sure that they know where the bathrooms are. Like, it sounds so little, but someone's gonna hear that and go, oh, so my guests are taken care of, and they go, yeah, of course your guests are taken care of. So I want you to think about what are those things that we're gonna be kind of implementing in it. I like to think of it as like a high-end hotel experience. I mean, we're in hospitality. There's a really big difference when you go to a Marriott to a Ritz. Like, you're not gonna show up at the Ritz and expect them to not know everything about you, right? Like, you're gonna show up and be like, they're gonna greet you at the front door, they're gonna probably know your name. If you're a continued customer, they're gonna make sure they understand everything. When they go into client meetings, they're gonna really make sure they feel valued. And that's because that personalization is what leads to loyalty. It's like once you go once, you're like, well, I gotta do this again and again. So how are we gonna redefine our audience? So the first step we're gonna do is we're gonna be thinking about how to redefine our audience. I will say there is a workbook at the end of this you can get if you want homework. I got homework if you want to walk through all of this and do it. But a few things to think about is, what is the actual result that our clients want? And the answer is no, they don't just want pictures. They want some kind of transformation. What are these problems that they're thinking about? What are the things that they're like keeping them up at night? Are the questions I like to ask my clients is, well, what keeps them up at night? Because for some clients, it could be the design. They're like, I need to have not a single wrinkle in my linen or I will lose it. Or they're gonna be the client that says, honestly, like, could literally care less about the linen color. Like, I just wanna make sure my guests have a good time. Why do these things matter? I also want you to consider who they're getting trends outside of Pinterest. I mean, I don't know if y'all know Quiet Luxury. Like, that was TikTok Sophia Richie. Like, that was literally a PR marketing stunt gone viral, which then affected the last, year of weddings, I would say. Like, she did a really good job establishing that. That is where especially your younger couple, so if you're someone who's like, I am marketing to younger couple, there's a really good chance that they are on Pinterest and Instagram, but there's also even better chance that they're looking at influencers and what they're designing. And does PR or press matter to them? The badges matter, but not as much as you think. Because some clients actually are like, no, I want privacy. I don't really care about that. So like I mentioned, first thing is gonna be copy and messaging. So whenever we're thinking about our ideal client, the core piece of everything that we're gonna build upon, so let's say we're rebuilding this marketing house, is not gonna be your pictures. It's gonna be the last thing I look at. Definitely not gonna be your Instagram for a hot minute. I am looking at the fundamental, which is the messaging. The words are the things they're gonna remember. Very rarely will you have someone who looks at your pictures and go, I have to have that exact image. It's a lot rarer than we think. You know what they're gonna remember? How things feel. And how things feel, one of the strongest ways we convey it when you're in a sea of vendors is through our messaging. I mean, just think about their searching. So they're going on Google, they see 700 photographers. For example, I had a film photographer at my wedding, so I specifically knew the exact type of film photographer I wanted. I still had options, and they all at the end of the day had very similar style. So what was I buying? I was actually buying an experience. So it went back to that messaging. So that's what we're gonna start to think about, that storytelling. And like I had mentioned earlier, like Ritz-Carlton actually in 2023, so my husband works in corporate marketing, so we geek out over stuff like this. They did a full transformation of their messaging, guys. They didn't change the logo. They didn't change anything else. You know what they changed? The words. They spent millions of dollars to change the words because they knew how much that mattered. So what I really loved about this was they had how will your stay leave you became their core piece of marketing. Not we provide hotels, we provide rooms, we provide resorts. How will your stay leave you? That's what they spent millions of dollars to figure out to sell to you. So I'm gonna give a few examples. So these are just client examples. So first is gonna be a photographer. So when you're selling photos, are you selling an 8-hour package with an associate? Yes, yes. That's not actually what they're gonna end up buying at the end of the day, because probably everybody they're looking at also offers 8 hours, 11 by 11 heirloom album, like credit. Like they're all gonna be on the same playing field. So what are we gonna up level? I'll read it in case, I don't know if it can be seen, but the joy of gathering your people around as you get ready, the flutter of the nerves as the ceremony music begins, the feel of your partner's hands upon yours as they cut the cake. These moments are real, they're raw, and they're you. We translate them into photos that you can hold on to decades. After all, you want to relive this day for the rest of your lives. This is the big seller though, film photographer. So I had to figure out, okay, film photographer, big market. We did competitor analysis. What did separate my client apart? She still shoots on her grandfather's cameras. That is a core messaging pillar, because you know when people book her, they talk about how their grandparents would take pictures of them growing up. That's what they're selling. All of our wedding packages include film photography shot on family heirlooms. So that's, again, what is that unique thing? I want you to think about your business. There's probably something like this. This isn't something she came to us saying, I want my messaging to be about my grandfather. This was in that discovery phase of figuring out, well, why did you get into this? Something inspired you to do this crazy, weird world of weddings. Like, we didn't just wake up one day and go like, I'm gonna do this. What inspired you? So for example, this client's messaging was all around family and connections. Another one for wedding planning. Wedding planning packages tend to be quite similar. So we create an unforgettable experience from start to finish. We curate every detail from venue scouting to arranging once-in-a-lifetime guest experiences. Ensuring your wedding weekend is memorable isn't just memorable, it leaves guests in awe. So I'm not selling a planning service, I'm selling the fact that at the end of the day, they're gonna leave in awe and be like, that was the best party ever. That's what I'm selling, is that transformation. There's also this narrative that like we have to be stuffy. No, we can be super fun. So this is a floral client. She has all lowercase lettering. It was an interesting choice we ended up going with that. At first I was like, I don't know, but it vibes with her client well. No capitalization in her Instagram or anything. So you can be like weird and fun and quirky and charge a lot of money still. So there is literally nothing we love more than when you give us an idea, especially a sentimental or quirky one, and we get to run absolutely wild with it. That's our job. So as a florist, this is their job. Their job is not to tell you what kind of bouquet. What is their job? Listen to you, create something that makes your jaw drop when you walk into the room. That's what we're selling. One more example, because I love a good example. I like to do like a variety of vendors, so I can try to hopefully I'm touching all the bases I can. Stationery is sometimes some of the hardest, because you're like, well, I'm competing against Minted. So we think of our work as creating a series of moments for your guests to experience, both before your wedding and once they arrive. From the first envelope that arrives at their house, to the sign perched on the bar as they order the luxe cocktail, everything we design brings texture and sensory detail. We also need to consider our social media captions as well. If we're starting to get into like the really DIY vibe of the Instagram, again, they're gonna look at that and they're gonna be like, I don't even wanna look at your website to see what your messaging is. So if you have someone managing your account, awesome. Just make sure you have a really consistent brand voice, they understand. Because a big thing we see is someone will outsource certain items, but then they never establish that base. And they're like, well, I'm paying someone, but like it's not working. And then we'll look at the copy and be like, oh, because you sound different because someone else is writing it. We just wanna make sure we keep a nice level playing field. So for example, this one is about communication. So for example, this client, we say, we know that even with a wedding planner, you might have questions about timelines, best portrait spots, and how to organize your family photos. We'll touch base multiple points during time together. And then 2 months from your wedding, we'll go through your wedding day checklist, build your family portraits, connect you with your vendors. So instead of answering the timeline question of like, when do you communicate, we made it really clear that we will work with your wedding planner, not with you, with your wedding planner, because we're a team. We're gonna go ahead and touch base multiple times, and we're gonna help you build those things out. So instead of just being like, oh, hey, like we'll reach out 3 months before, we turn that caption into something that gives them a little bit more, and of course, feeds the narrative that they have on their website. We also need to think about blogs as an up level. The idea that the higher you get, the less they book you off Google is literally a lie. I don't know who's teaching it, but like statistically, 73% of luxury, 71% of ultra luxury found at least one vendor from an internet search. I'm gonna go into a little bit more why that is in a minute. But that means we have to consider, okay, if we're doing a blogging SEO strategy, like you should be, because it books big money clients. Again, they come off the street, they're still gonna spend 15K, it doesn't matter how they got there. We need to make sure we're up leveling things. So again, is it super DIY, or are we actually talking about like how we took over? So for a real wedding, the couple story, again, depending on your audience, we might shift the narrative to be like, instead of only talking about the couple story, I want to talk about how the vendors work together, because that's my ideal client. They're looking a bit more for that. Up leveling the topic. So for example, this is a client where the blogs are actually part of the sales strategy. So they have a type of client that tends to be, one partner is pretty type A, the other partner is like, the linens have to be gorgeous. So what we did was we created a series of blogs that they could send during that sales process to answer questions before they ever came up. So again, what to expect on a discovery call. Sounds real basic, but if you go to Reddit right now, there's someone out there asking, I don't get what a discovery call is, because they don't know what that is. Like, they don't understand what any of this stuff is. They're like 2 years old, and we're having to toddle them through it. So we created a blog, and this is a client that does real luxury weddings, and it's still that simple question, is that important to them? So we made sure we wrote something. For example, if you're doing venues, you could talk about like exclusive venues that you might not be able to always get into, things like that. Or even just talking about your favorite venues because the aesthetic are the type of weddings you want to be working. So how do we get started? First, I want you to look at your reviews. What things do your couples tell you again and again? So a really fun trick is throw it into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT will straight up tell you what they're saying. I used to, back in the day before ChatGPT, print out all my clients' reviews and highlight it. Now I do ChatGPT and it tells me in 2 seconds. It's awesome. Because there's no reason, again, to change the narrative out of their voice. If they are saying that's what you're known for, then just say it louder for them. So for example, this was a client that's a venue and catering. And we were trying to figure out kind of how we're gonna do the messaging strategy, because they provide catering, and that can be kind of the same every time, right? Like, we show up and provide food and drink. So what we saw again and again were people talked a lot about the experience of the bar. So I was like, oh, let's have some fun with it. Our expert mixologists craft personalized drinks that are as memorable in taste as they are in experience, making every toast uniquely yours. So instead of just being like, we have an 8-hour bar package, which it does state at some point, we're painting a picture, right? Of like, we're gonna be there, we're gonna make it a really good time. Think about, what do you specialize in, and what kind of values do those couples have? Like, what are they really valuing out of? Unlike other vendors, what do you do different? I mean, the biggest thing is you should know your competition like the back of your hand, because you wanna make sure you're different than them. Like, you should know what they're doing, so that way you can kind of pivot a little bit the other way. Next is gonna be how it looks, because once we have that foundational strategy, if it's done correctly, your branding does become something quite memorable and something you're known for. So for example, I mean, we all know this. If you're like embarrassed to show someone something, you might want to consider doing a slight refresh. And I'm not saying you have to like rebrand yourself by any means, but I just want you to think about it. It could be causing to attract bad leads. Clients can doubt capability. So the biggest thing when we think about branding is that we need to be consistent. If they're looking at one piece of social media and every Canva graphic is different, even any budget client is gonna notice that. And they're gonna be like, well, they can't figure out a font. Like, do I wanna give them 10 grand or 5 grand or even $1,000? Confidence in our branding translates to confidence in our pricing as well. I mean, it's just natural. Like, when you show up to an event like this and you like do your hair and makeup, like I have my hair and makeup done, I feel way more confident now than I did when I walked in here at 3 o'clock. Like, it's just a natural thing. So the first thing, like I mentioned, is consistency. We need to make sure that if we're doing things with color, I love color. Color can be super luxury, But we want to be consistent. We want to have, when they go to our social media or they go to our website or even our pricing guide, I feel like a lot of times for my clients, the pricing guide, they like forget they even have one. And they're like, oh, I haven't updated, like the logo's old. And I'm like, why is the logo? Well, that's the last piece you're giving them is that last little nugget, and you're gonna tell them I forgot to change the logo. Social media, so again, the same thing, having the feed be consistent. For fonts, are we making sure that they're actually legible? I don't know how tiny fonts get now, but they get real small. Like if your font is not a 14:16, you have missed out on a big chunk of audience because of just straight up accessibility. We have to remember that we have a lot of clients who might be using accessibility features on their phone. And so if we have really tiny or really recursive or it's not legible, you could literally just be missing out because a family member of theirs who's a buyer can't read it. I've done an audit before where I was like, I can't read this and I have LASIK 20/20. So you've definitely lost out. And she just didn't realize it. She was like, oh, it's like 11 size font. And I'm like, that's why it's too tiny. And look on your phone too, because phones are the biggest culprit. And then when it comes to thinking about like the logo, again, are we using it consistently throughout? Because the more someone spends, the more they're gonna notice the details. They're gonna notice a typo, they're gonna notice a weird spacing, they're gonna notice all of that. It also helps you gravitate to the right client. So these are two different brands, very different vibes, very different feelings, right? I don't know if you can tell it super well, but this one on the left is, we call it East Coast Modern Prep. It's New England meets Charleston. Different vibes, right? Like it feels different when you look at the colors. The colors feel lighter. We have the sailcloth tents, we have stripes. That is a different type of client than someone booking someone who's my moodier, my European artistry, like my nostalgia. If you have this branding and you're trying to get that client, that's gonna be a huge disconnect. And it could literally just be like the tiniest little things we're shifting. So I want you to send your brand to your friends who don't really understand what we do, because there's plenty of them. And I want you to ask, how do I make you feel? Like when you look at my website, how do you feel? Because they, off the street, should be able to give you a really good sense, because we get attached, right? Like I'm so attached to my branding. Like how dare anyone tell me? But we have to sometimes just like step back just a tiny bit. Images. Whew, image curation is my favorite thing in the whole wide world, because it can change and shift the perspective. So this client on the left, if you look at her website, you're gonna see editorial, fashion-focused, flat lays. My client on the right, you're not gonna see a single flat lay on her website. Two photographers, same price point, different cities. But this on the right, she's not gonna have a flat lay. Why? Because her couples aren't buying that. Couple on the left, they're paying, I don't know, 10, 15,000 for paper, so you better make sure. This client, I don't care about the paper. So again, think about that. Maybe you might just simply have images that literally are just telling two different stories. And so we're just naturally attracting people that might just be looking at slightly different pictures. And again, ask a friend. How does that image feel versus that image? Like, how does that make you feel? Just ask a friend or family member. And if it's not how you wanted them to feel, then I think we need to swap that image out. So in 3 to 5 words, how do you want your ideal clients to describe your brand? If they're gonna be brand ambassadors and telling all their friends how perfect you are, which obviously we hope so, what are the words they're using? Like how are they telling their friend how great you are? I want you to start to think about that. Look at your reviews for that as well. If you're wondering like, wait, Adrienna, where do I find it? Look at your reviews. What did they say about you? If someone looks at your Instagram and then goes to your website and then goes to your Facebook, have you touched your Facebook in 47 years, or is the logo old? See it every single day. They are going to look at every single touch point, make sure it's consistent, even if you don't use it anymore. I don't care, still update it. Website, obviously we had to come to the website at some point. Hands down, most important piece of your marketing right now. As a marketing agency, if you're gonna outsource to me, a virtual assistant, a social media manager, an ads person, you know what my job is? Website conversion for 90% of my clients. Like that's like a huge chunk of my job. So we have to make sure that we make sure it actually works for us. And it comes down to simply that referrals are not booking like they used to. So back when I was a planner, even in 2018, 2019, as a planner, I could send referrals and they wouldn't really ask a lot of questions, right? They'd be like, yeah, fine. You guys notice that shift, or is it just me and my clients? Everybody's seen that? Yeah, they have to do their own research. Here's the fun part. This has nothing to do with weddings. This is a consumer buying habit that has shifted. I could literally do an hour presentation on that, but I digress. 70% of Gen Z, 69% of millennials only trust a brand after carrying out their own research. That's from Vogue Business. That is not from a wedding statistic. When I renovated my kitchen and I was looking for a faucet, I stood in the aisle at Lowe's with my lovely husband and looked at faucets. And you know what my husband did? He pulled up the Lowe's app to look at reviews. And you know what I said? That's smart. We should have done that. Your couple's doing the exact thing. They are wanting to do their own research. They want to look you up. They're going to Google your name. They're going to click on every single thing that comes up. If it is a Threads account where you are bashing the industry, they see it. They post it on Reddit. They are active. Also, Reddit, don't even get me started. I am in 60 Reddits. You're going to see a lot of Reddit things in a few minutes. They are so freaking savvy, and we have to catch up with that, which is why I want you to think about that. They're not just going to book you because someone said you're cool. They're going to look at all your pieces. Because they're going to get to a stage where they have to cut down vendors. Unfortunately, we can't all win them all. They're going to get to a stage where one little thing could be between you making money and you going fishing again and try to find the next one. So for example, if we use a website template, I love a good website template. Showit has obviously changed our industry considerably. In almost every city I speak in, there is multiple of the exact same type of vendor with the same style, with the same template. It's not just hard for your couples to know who you are, it's hard for your wedding planners. I posted about it on Threads, and I had a lot of wedding planners be like, yeah, I don't send them anymore because my couples don't know the difference when it's the same. So if you're using a template, like, love it, I'm here for it. How can we mix it up? How can we mix up the colors? How can we mix up the fonts? How can we mix up the image layout just a tiny bit? Because again, if couples are looking and they're confused on who you are. So we had one inquiry that we worked with, and she just kept being compared to another competitor. And I was like, well, you have the same website. And she was like, what? And I was like, yeah, your website looks the same. So they just they just don't know what they don't know. So what should our website actually have? So top hero section of your website, before anyone scrolls, y'all gotta make it clear what you do and where you're located. Y'all look the same. So a florist is gonna look like a venue, it's gonna look like a photographer, because you're all gonna have the same type of pictures at the end of the day, right? It's a wedding or corporate. It's not like we're getting that varied. So we need to make sure it's really clear. It's not just for SEO, although it is. But I want you to make it really clear instant within the first 5 seconds, because we know from looking at Google Analytics that websites that have a really high drop-off, so people are spending 10 seconds, it's because no one knows what you do and they are like, well, I don't have time for this. Well-curated images, not overly styled shoot or being really selective with styled shoot images. Again, they're smart. They know what it is now. They're fully aware of the trend. They go on a website, every styled shoot ends up becoming published. They get confused. Just make sure we're really curating it quite well so we're using a nice variety. Mobile view, I guarantee I could bet probably a couple $1,000s, almost everybody in this room, you're at 65% or more on mobile now. Pretty much, I don't have a single client that's not. I have one client that's 92% on mobile. So if your mobile view, if your contact form, please, when you get home today, check your contact form. I did a website audit on Monday on my plane right here. Her contact form didn't work on mobile. Scares me. Super simple. Easy to navigate. Again, if we're giving them 47 options, they don't understand what you mean. So we need to make sure we're keeping it real clear in that main navigation. What do you want them to do? Do you want them to go to a certain page? We don't need 47 pages for every single package you've ever offered. We need to make it clear and concise. And then, like I said, SEO. Still gonna be a game changer for you. We also wanna make sure we focus on that expert social proof. If you're not gonna brag about your business, because I know most vendors are I don't like to talk about my services. Well, then have your clients do it for you. Make it a pillar, share it on Instagram. The amount of clients that we do audits, and I'm like, you've never shared a review on Instagram? Okay, let's say you have 10 reviews. You come to me, you're like, I only have 10 reviews. Okay, share one every single week. You think someone's gonna notice in 10 weeks that review number 1 got reused? No, share it again and again. Just yell it to the ether. We gotta get really loud with it. And don't have just a testimonial page on your website. No one's gonna click on it. Your bounce rate's gonna go crazy. They also are used to testimonials being in it. Again, it's a consumer habit now that we shop online more. Think about it, if you're shopping for a pair of jeans, you're not gonna go to a separate tab to look at a testimonial, right? You're not gonna see any reviews. You know what you're gonna think? Oh, it's garbage. They're just thinking, it's just a natural thing. So on your homepage, again, they might only be visiting your homepage. Make it really impactful. On your About page, use reviews that use your name. We're a brand. Make sure we're using our name in the testimonial, or a team member if you work with a larger corporation, or the business name. If we have multiple services, have reviews to back up each service. I don't want to be scrolling on your services page and get to reviews at the bottom. We need to be pre-selling them higher, right? We need to be getting in the back of their mind, again, because they have to be reminded 47 times for the best. So let's go ahead and filter them through. We also have to make contact forms short again. We have to get there, because I don't know when it happened where we started adding 67 questions, but couples are real frustrated with it. So this is from Reddit, obviously. So this went viral, I think last summer. This was a real reply from a real photographer who needed to know how long the ceremony, the reception, cocktail, or first look, wedding coordinator, hair and makeup, guest. Yeah, funny? If that vendor definitely got doxxed, they definitely got their info out there. If you need to know that, we should not be in this industry anymore, because they literally don't know that. I got married and was a planner and didn't know 90% of that. It's also, again, a statistic. So 25% conversion rate. What I mean by that is if 100 people go to your contact page, how many people convert? I want that to be a number you can just tell me right now. That should be an essential number you're thinking about. Because if you have hundreds of people going to your contact page, but they're not filling it out, there's something we got to think about there. And it also is just statistics. The less questions you have, the better. Leave some of those fluffier, fun questions for later. Use them as the opener, right? I have a lot of clients who are they're bugging me. I'm very personal. I'm I love it. Make it an optional question. Do not make it mandatory. Or have that be your intro question on a call as your icebreaker. Price transparency, regardless, I don't care if you charge $1 million, you got to put it. You know why? They're still using the word budget. It's still an actual word we use. So this is my favorite subreddit. It's called Big Budget Brides. It's great because people talk about money anonymously way more. You know why Facebook groups tend to be more price shoppers? Well, it's just natural, right? If you have $1 million, they're still not going to be bashful about it. They're still going to be I want to be anonymous. Price transparency. So again, we have a $200,000 to $350,000 budget looking for a planner. They're using the word budget, right? They're not using the word they're actually using that language. So we need to be having our pricing. This one I thought was really cool, and because it talked about we are very lucky to work with $1 million budget. But again, they could use the word budget. They didn't just say we have $1 million bucks. They were no, I need to find a vendor who can do it for $1 million. So regardless of your price point, $1,000, $1 million, have it be pricing. There's ways we can word it. So I like averages. So for example, because again, I'm a former vendor. As a marketing agency, you can pay me $500. You can seriously pay me $20,000, $30,000. I obviously have to give some kind of middle ground, right? You're not just gonna come to me. So for example, for my florist, we could say average on wedding florals, depending on, again, your price point. If you work at specific venues a lot, we have some clients where we create specific pricing guides for those venues that we know they're gonna book again and again because they know the pricing might adjust for whatever reason. For design, for anything that's paper, individual guest is a really great way because again, they can math it out themselves, they can figure it out. So for day of paper, an enhanced guest experience, $150 to $200 a guest. So again, you can play with it. For planners, you can say what the average budget you work with is. There's no reason not to just say it, especially my percentage-based planners. This is always kind of interesting to figure out the lingo with percentage-based because I'm trying to figure out how do I explain 10% and if you go over? We just got to give averages. So $100,000, 100 guests starts at 14. It at least gives them something to go with. And then next is social media. So Instagram isn't about your number of followers. Doesn't matter, pretty much any price point from this survey. Only 7% of ultra luxury and 11% of luxury clients said a social media following was important. Tiny fraction. Because most people come to me and they're well, I don't have a big following, so I can't book big clients. You 100% can, because that's not something they're really actually looking at. You know what was more important in that survey? Sharing their brand values, the vendor's personality, having a mobile responsive website was more important than Instagram. And responding to emails within 24 hours, hands down, once you get to 400 and up, you gotta answer within seconds. They get bored so fast. So what are we thinking about? Consistency. They're looking at your social mostly to see if you're active. They're not really looking at your follower count because again, like that doesn't really matter. They're looking to see if you're active on the platform. Are they seeing you actually consistently post? They want to look at engaging, how you engage with other vendors. So a really great strategy is to start engaging with other vendors. It connects the algorithm. It connects actually SEO and Instagram. I'm curious where it's going to go because we're getting to the stage where your captions are searchable now. And if you guys knew that your captions are searchable now in terms of keyword. So again, like how can we like elevate that? Instagram stories, especially for younger generations, they like don't really care for the feed. Usually like we're finding like, and this is an Instagram statistic, like Instagram said, our stories are more popular than anything right now, even reels. So if they're saying it, might as well listen. And then carousel, so whenever you're posting, don't post a single picture anymore. Make sure it's a carousel. That means, I think some accounts up to 20 pictures that you like swipe through. That is gonna get you much higher engagement than a single photo. And then we have to be eye-catching. We know short attention span. So whenever we're creating reels for clients, most of our clients' sweet spot is only 10 to 12 seconds. It's like so fast. I have one client that like anything over 8 seconds and her engagement drops. It's like so fast, which means we only have like 1 or 2 seconds for them to actually not like keep swiping through. So we can definitely consider how are we gonna have some kind of hook? How are we gonna have some kind of before and after transformation? My favorite, easiest post is get a video of the space before, get a video of the space after. I can use that 100 different ways. Because again, they're buying that, right? They're buying what this place can turn into. They're not buying just this place. They're like, what can this place turn into? Honestly, start investing in maybe having content creators come on and help out. Like, if you are like, Adrienne, I don't have time for this, I get it. Hire someone for some of your bigger weddings, get that video, because your quality of video is also what's gonna make the difference. We have clients that will have a ton of video, but the quality is bad, and I'm like, I can't. Their reels aren't gonna do anything. If the video quality isn't good, I cannot make magic with it. It is not possible. So if you're like thinking, I need to invest in an Instagram strategy next year, I want you to start bringing in people that have a nice iPhone and get it on like cinematic. I mean, you know, as a videographer, like that I can play with. I can't play with like grainy, bad quality. And if someone is in your DMs, guys, they're a hot lead. I don't know, I see so many vendors that have do not DM me. And unless you're at the stage where like you don't need marketing anymore because you're like top percent, then like, yeah, of course don't DM me. But like the rest of everybody else, like that is a hot lead. Like I've had to tell so many clients to take that off their bio. I'm like, please tell me you reply to your DMs. They're interested. You know how hard it is as a marketer to get them in your DMs? Oh my God, like it is the hardest thing ever. And then highlight partnerships. I love collaboration posts. So that's when you show up on both people's feeds. It works real well with venues. Venues tend to have the highest engagement than photographers actually. So whenever we can collaborate, it does require a bit of course, you figuring out does the picture match both feeds. Like I get it, it's a bit of work. They do very, very, very well right now. So I wanna explain as we wrap up what this looks like. Because the next question I usually get is, well, how does this work as like a whole, right? Like how do all these pieces go? So we have two hypothetical clients. So client A, they're looking for a photographer. Their budget's $20K for 2 days. They're gonna value family and sentimental details. So they're looking for a wedding that is intimate, meaningful, uniquely their own, and their details are gonna carry a bit more of an emotional weight. Very different client. So what's our messaging? Warm, inviting, nostalgic. We're gonna be focusing a lot, I did copy project approved this morning for a client, and this is pretty much this client who we're marketing to, so I know it on the back of my hand. But we're thinking about things like parents, teary-eyed glances, a sibling's heartfelt toast, the way the partner looks at them, like that is again, more of the lingo, more of that nostalgia than some of my other clients where it's like that would turn off their client, they're just like not feeling it. Their blog is focused a lot more on the story and the details. We're gonna focus a bit less on design details. We're gonna focus more on like handwritten vows, things like that. Like I'm not gonna talk about certain things as much. Branding, so actually for this client, we're doing lover meets Heige. So we're doing like warm and then Taylor Swift lover. And then group shots, guest experience, personal details. Like, I'm gonna be really careful with her curation of her images, so that way we're really targeting it. Her Instagram, we're focusing on moments between the couple and loved ones. Again, we're not gonna do a lot of posts, we're not gonna do a ton of too much before and after transformation actually for this client, because their client's way more concerned about like grandma getting low on the dance floor. Like, that's what their kind of vibe is. And then captions that speak to that. And the other caveat, let's say they're looking for a planner, and then we're trend conscious, right? They're thinking about fashion, fun. They're gonna be the client that has not one extra outfit, but two. Like, they're gonna be the ones that think about that, who's like, I gotta have, post. They're probably gonna have a content creator at this point, let's be honest. They definitely have a content creator. And they're high energy, like their lasting impression. Like, again, that's gonna be a very different marketing message. We're gonna be fun, we're gonna be confident. We're gonna be warm, but we're not gonna be like overly motherly, because that's not what they're looking for. We're gonna talk about the creativity, handle the details while you soak up the excitement, creating celebrations that are anything but ordinary. The blog is gonna be focused on vendor, team, and collaboration. We're gonna make sure we really talk about everybody and how they came together. And obviously we're gonna talk about the fashion. Like, for that, make sure you get the name of the gowns or the attire or the suits. SEO, Pinterest, it'll explode. Make sure you get all that in your questionnaire. Website, bold typography, pop of color. Again, we're gonna focus a bit more on that. Party, a lot of video. So websites, when we're doing websites, if we have a client like this, I'm more inclined to see how much video I can get on there, because I think the video is gonna sell a lot better to this type of client than just like a straight editorial. Reels for them, the before and after, do very well. And then focusing on those unforgettable events. So hopefully, as you have seen how everything starts to get tied up, when we're thinking about up-leveling our marketing, again, to any price range, it's really just not just the aesthetic, but it's about how we're gonna create this cohesive atmosphere, this cohesive world where all of these pieces align and they speak to the right audience. Because a lot of times that's just the issue we have, is we're just not quite talking to the right person. So I want you to look at your audience. What are differentiators, especially year after year? You should be looking at this every year. Like, this is like a homework exercise you should be doing every single year, is as your business grows, your ideal client will change. Super rare we get someone who's been working with the same type of client every year. So how are we gonna go ahead and get through that? What are pieces of our client experience that we might wanna be highlighting? Like, do we have team members? Do we do destination? Is our messaging, is our imagery, does it all connect? Because at the end of the day, I don't want you to think of your business as just a business, as just a solopreneur, because you're a brand. We're in the day and age where people are buying brands. I mean, influencer marketing isn't going anywhere. That type of branding isn't gonna go anywhere. So we need to make sure we have to start shifting that narrative. Because I want you guys to remember that you control the narrative of your business. Not me, not anybody else. You do. Like, you have the option to control the exact narrative of your business. So I wanna make sure you're thinking about that. If your narrative of your business isn't quite there, then there's no point of doing Instagram and all of that marketing. So like I mentioned, I do have a book if anybody's like a homework person, because I am. I give you homework. If you're interested, you can also get the slides. So if you want to see any of the slides, I do have that for you guys as well.